Hello and welcome. We at Arlington Community Television in the next couple of weeks will be interviewing each of the Arlington candidates for mayor, alderman, and board of education. Our format is simple. Each candidate within an office will be given the very same questions to answer, and we will have no follow-up questions. Hello and welcome. Our next candidate is Ms. Cheryl Pardue. Ms. Pardue is one of two candidates for mayor this year. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Pardue, and welcome. We'll get started here. Our first question, of course, really isn't a question, but if you could briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
My name is Cheryl Pardue. I am currently an alderman with the town of Arlington. Why I want to run for public office, I feel that I have skills and talents that I can use to benefit our town. And instead of expecting someone else to fulfill that role, I figured it was my civic duty to step up and try to do my part in helping our town.
Okay, so specifically what qualifications do you have for the office of mayor?
For the office of mayor, the beauty of public office is there's no one certain path to running for public office. I do have the benefit of attending board of mayor and alderman meetings for 6 years prior to serving on the board, and now that I've served for 2 years, I have intimate knowledge of how our town government works and our budget system and how each of the departments within our government work together. But I also have various backgrounds in serving our community in leadership roles with Main Street Arlington and Relay for Life. But more importantly than all of that, I just have a heart to listen to the residents and to serve the residents. This is a public office, and I feel that as mayor, it's important for us to have a good connection with the residents of our town because we represent the town and not our own self-interest.
Okay, so if you would, please explain your approach, if you're elected mayor, to managing growth in Arlington.
Managing growth. Our town is at that critical juncture where businesses are wanting to come here. For me, Depot Square has been and will always be the heart of our town, and so as we're growing, I want to make sure that we're maintaining the integrity of Depot Square. I want to ensure that Highway 70 corridor doesn't become a ghost town, that we have balanced growth throughout our town. Currently, as developments are coming to the board, we decide on them on a case-by-case basis. And so what I would like to do is to implement clear and concise guidelines and ordinances to direct these developments towards a long-term vision so that it gives our developers, it gives the town staff, and even the board just a consensus as we're growing and moving towards a particular goal.
Okay, so specifically what role should a mayor play in a successful community, in our case Arlington?
Yeah, a successful community can be defined in many different ways, and I believe that the mayor's role is to have a clear understanding of what our current assets are and how to protect those assets moving forward. So if we have a safe community, what are we doing now to maintain a safe community, and what can we do to ensure that in the long-term future? If we have a strong school system, what can we as a community do, consistently reviewing and assessing what that school system looks like and how we can support the school board and the school staff in moving forward to that vision. And I believe that the mayor's role is to always be working towards a long-term vision for our town.
Okay, so other than managing growth, what biggest obstacle faces the mayor in this next term?
Biggest obstacle? I don't know that there's necessarily an obstacle.
Or an important task.
Important task. I believe with the development is maintaining our budget. Right now I feel that our budget is not clearly defined in how we're using taxpayer dollars for certain programs. And so as development comes, there's more of a strain placed on infrastructure and town resources, and so I feel that we need to get a better budget system in place so that we can allocate funds appropriately, whether it's putting more money into sewer and repairs or to street repairs. If you expend money in one direction, you might sacrifice it in another. So it's maintaining that balance, understanding where we are with our budget moving forward, And again, always moving towards that long-term vision. What budget decisions are we making now that address those long-term visions that we have for the town?
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We want to remind everyone that early voting starts August the 30th and Election Day is September 19th. Good luck in the election, Ms. Pardue.
Thank you so much.
And now we'll go to our next candidate. Our next candidate is Mr. Mike Wisman. Mr. Wisman is one of our 2 candidates for mayor. Mr. Wisman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So let's get started. First of all, if you could, for the people, briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
Okay. Well, I'm the current mayor, but first and foremost, I'm a husband and a father. My wife, Wendy, is a respiratory therapist. She's the dance coach at Arlington Middle School. She choreographs at Arlington High School dance team. I have a son in 8th grade with Arlington Middle. I have a daughter in 1st grade at Donaldson Elementary. And I'm a Memphis firefighter for over 18 years with a background in emergency services. I have a background in business management, degree from the University of Memphis in professional studies. What I would like to, running for office, it's just one of those things that I never planned on doing. I never planned on being in public service, especially on the fire side and in elected office, but it's one of those things I was kind of drawn to because I feel like I'm good at building relationships, solving problems, listening to people. So that desire to just kind of fell in my lap. Never planned on making a career, and I don't know how much longer it'll go, as far as election time. But I really enjoy just being a part of the community, and I feel like you can give back to your community most when you're involved in it. And so we've been very active and engaged in this community, not just with myself, but as my family.
Okay, all right. So the second question is specifically, what are your qualifications for this office, for the office of mayor?
I don't know if anybody necessarily has to have qualifications to run for any elected office, but it's more attributes, I think. So as being in the office, I'm hoping that people will see just firsthand what's going on in town, the good in town. If you want to get more specific on qualifications, I have a background as a Shelby County School Board member. And for those who don't know, we built a school system from scratch here in Arlington. We're in the 5th or 6th year. That was a tremendous undertaking. And that was something that took round-the-clock effort. So I think the effort is shown there, but we've also, when you focus, as far as qualifications for mayor, it's again, just being able to listen to people, being able to know that staff is basically, the mayor doesn't run the day-to-day operations. You have to let staff that are sometimes more experts in fields than you are. You have to listen to board members, and you have to listen to community members. So you just have to be willing to know your limitations as a person, and make it a team effort to be a mayor or to be a CEO of anything. Okay. So that's
okay. All right. So next, if you would, please discuss your approach to managing growth here in Arlington.
Growth seems to be the hot issue right now, and so it's one of those things where the joke is when everybody moves in that they're the last one to move in, nothing's going to change. So let's kind of look at some numbers real fast. So back in 2000. Arlington was about 2,500 residents. The 2010 census, we were 11,500 residents. That was about a 348% growth over that 10 years, according to the census. Over the last 9 years, we did a special census at the end of 2018. We have about 13,300 officially on the special census. We project a little more, but that's all we have as far as officially. So that's only about a 15% growth. So when we talk about growth in town, there's 2 different kinds. There's residential and there's commercial. So you saw the tremendous growth a decade ago of residential. Now the residential growth still is steady and it's good, but you're starting to see the commercial come in. And that's where the challenges are for not just the mayor, but aldermen, staff, everything, trying to keep up with infrastructure, trying to keep up with wants versus needs, trying to make sure that everything's attractive, because we're on everybody's radar. I mean, we're on, when they see a population boom nationally, these marketing firms and these firms that work for corporations, they start wanting to see why. And then they look around, they see we have good schools and good parks and good infrastructure. So they want to be here. And so the people that don't want growth, that say they don't want growth, still usually want something. Everybody wants that other restaurant to go sit down and eat at, or everybody wants a hardware store or a boutique store. So the challenge of growth is what is defined as growth. We have a West Tennessee Veterans Home that's slated to come here. That will provide a couple hundred jobs. We just expanded Wright Medical. That's more jobs. It's more industry, more chances for people to not just live here but work here, eat here. So it's just trying to manage the growth. We don't have a firm for the town that goes out and encourages people to come here. We focus on the main needs of the town, and then it's just basically we have to embrace what comes. So we have to make it as nice as possible and try to use our zoning and our ordinances to channel it to what we want this town to look like in the future.
Okay. So what role does a mayor play in a successful community?
The mayor, kind of like what I touched on earlier, was that you have to be able to listen to those around you. You have to know your limitations. Active and engaged. I know I've said that before, but I mean, any given day, you'll see me coaching a ball team, but you may see me in a suit at a function, and then you may see me out to dinner with my family. But everywhere you go, I hate to say, even in a small town, you have to make yourself accessible and available. And so it's a 24/7, 365 job. I don't complain about it because I signed up for it, but it's one that you have to have a strong support from your family, and you have to be willing to listen and not necessarily challenge people on the difference of opinions, but you have to listen and then maybe not always give people the answer they want, but the answer they need to hear. And as long as it's a respectful discussion, that's where it is. So it's building relationships, it's knowing your limitations, and the key, again, is allowing staff to do their job.
Okay. Our final question is, so what, other than managing growth, is the biggest issue you see facing Arlington in this next term of mayor?
Not facing growth?
Aside from the growth.
Well, I mean, that's one of those things. It's maintaining the school system. I mean, that is where we saw the boom in the early 2000s was because a high school and an elementary school. So being an attractive community, you have to remain attractive. So you do have to, we just updated our land use plan, our future land use plan, which was a 20-year plan that kind of guides the town. And so we updated that just actually a couple nights ago. And what that does is it takes what was put in place 10 years ago before maybe some of these roads or infrastructure was built. And we said, you know what, that may have made sense then, but it doesn't make sense now. So we're trying to have the crystal ball to see what makes sense down the road. So we have one of the youngest communities in the state. And so, but we also have an aging population. So when we talk about like parks, you know, we talk about wants versus needs. Some people don't think parks are needs, but I think they are. I think we've expanded, you know, fields, but when we talk about parks, it's more than just a field or tennis courts that we're building, you know, that I'm excited about. It's walking trails, it's community programs, you know, community events to bring the community together. That's where we talk about parks, and that is one of the biggest things that I've always said, that with a young community, but also an aging community, how can we bring them all together? And then, of course, we've addressed public safety already with the expansion of our fire station. So those are the things that we as a town have done, I think, well, and we have to continue to do those well. The growth is going to happen if you're doing your job, and whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. But we have to focus on infrastructure, public safety, parks, and I hate to say parks and amenities, but parks and opportunities for our residents, and the rest will happen on its own naturally.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Good luck in the election.
Thank you.
Want to remind everyone that early voting starts on August the 30th, and the election day is September 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, our next guest is Mr. Larry Harmon, who is the candidate for Arlington Alderman Position 1. Mr. Harmon, thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's get started with our first question. If you could first briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to run for public office.
Well, my name is Larry Harmon, and I appreciate the opportunity to come tell you a little about myself. I've been married to my wife Angela for 30 years. We have 3 grown children, and we moved to Arlington 11 years ago. We bought an old home in the historic district there right next to Depot Square, and immediately just fell in love with the town, with the small charm, the feel that it had, the neighbors, the people. It was wonderful. We got involved in the community, APTA, everything that really puts you in touch with the neighbors, the neighborhood, and the people. We did and really enjoyed it. It was just a couple of years later that I really saw the need for the citizens to have a voice in the town. Right next to our home and down through part of the old neighborhood, they were wanting to commercialize a lot of the old homes. And I couldn't really believe that, destroying a historic neighborhood was really the answer. And we talked to the neighbors, and it was time to step up and protect the neighborhood, the citizens, and we stepped up and we actually helped preserve our neighborhood. And at that point, I was pretty much, okay, as we grow, then to be a strong voice, we really need to stay on top of things. And at that point is when I really decided I wanted to get involved and kind of help guide and protect and be a voice.
Okay. All right, so specifically, what qualifications do you have for this particular alderman office?
Well, I am running for re-election. I have served the past 4 years in position 1 as an alderman. A little about my background. Well, originally I read qualifications to hold elected office, and it was very vague. A certain age, you had to live in your community for a short period, 1 year, 2, 3 years time to qualify. To me, qualifications, what I feel is qualifications, integrity, honesty, willing to work and serve your neighbors. And I've been a firefighter for 40 years, nearly 40 years. And my whole life has been based on community service, public service, and I've served since 2012 here in Arlington on the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeal, the Parks and Rec Committee, the Health and Safety Committee. I've really gotten involved with many aspects of our community. And I have made decisions, being a battalion chief for the last 18 years, I make decisions that involve many aspects within a community. Some of them are very basic decisions that I make, but I've really been able to make critical decisions based on information. Some of the decisions that I make are very simple over a good many years, and some of them are actually life and death decisions at a critical incident. So gathering information and making good decisions has always been a quality that I have been able to develop, and I hope that the citizens themselves will want this type of qualification.
Okay. So what are the most, in your opinion, the most important issues that are facing the mayor and board of aldermen in the next 5 years, and what plan do you have to address those?
Over the next 5 years, our town is growing. It's growing tremendously. And what protects our town, well, first off, with our school system. Our school system, with elected officials, our job is to make sure that our school system has the funding and the support that they need to keep growing this wonderful system that we already have. So that's a big priority. The codes and ordinances that we have, growth and development, that is huge right now. We have so much wanting to come in, and there's nothing wrong with proper growth. A town to be healthy needs proper growth, whether it's commercial or residential development. You got to have that balance, and in creating this balance, this affects taxes and infrastructure, because as you have the residential commercial growth, your infrastructure has to balance the needs that the citizens have, that the businesses have, and to keep your taxes where they really need to be, it has to be on an even keel as far as one not getting or outpacing the other. So the ordinances, as we have grown, some of our ordinances need to be updated. I have actually tried over the last year or two to help enforce a lot of our code and ordinances. Updates, there are certain ones that need to be updated, whether it's our mixed use, the event venue ordinances. There's so much that needs, where the loopholes need to be reworked so that we don't have growth, residential or commercial, that's not really fitting what we need here in town, that's not good for the town. What I plan to do is work to help create stronger code and ordinances, and then as the growth comes in, make sure that we stick to what we plan to do.
Okay. So in your opinion, what relationship should an alderman and mayor have with each other?
The alderman-mayor position, what both have to understand, both positions have to understand, is that we are elected to work together for the benefit of the citizens. We collectively are the voice. We're the ones that the citizens depend upon to protect the home values, their family, the family situation as far as safety. It has to be one of mutual respect and an understanding that everybody brings different ideas to the board, and we have to trust each other and really work to do what's best. It is a check and balance situation to a big extent, because we don't elect one person to make all the decisions. The town has elected 6 aldermen and a mayor, so it's up to us to work collectively to accomplish what our citizens expect of us.
Okay. So, and finally, our last question, you have about a minute and a half left in our time. Is there something that Arlington does not have now that you would like to see happen?
Yes, we've come a long way. Several years ago, I was pushing to help get the Board of Mayor Arlington alderman meetings videotaped. Our citizens are concerned about what's going on in their community, but many have so many responsibilities, whether it's with their children, job. It's really tough for a lot of them to get involved to come to these meetings. So what I would like to do is hoping that we can have a live stream of all the meetings, whether it's the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the Planning Commission. This will help any citizen that wants to stay on top of what's going on in my community. How can I get involved? Who's making good decisions? Who do I need to talk to about other things? This live streaming will enable the citizens who really want to get involved. It allows them to access to what's going on at their convenience, as well as the video. So I'm a firm believer that citizens need information, and this is my way of really trying to get this to them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much.
Good luck in the election.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everything.
We want to remind everyone that early voting starts August 30th and Election Day is September 19th. So get out and vote. Now we'll watch our next candidate. Our next guest is Mr. Dwight Barker, candidate for Arlington Alderman Position 2. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Barker.
Thanks for having me.
Our first question is, and it's not really a question, but if you could briefly describe who you are and why you want to run for public office.
All right, well, I'm Dwight Barker. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Sid, for over 20 years. We have 3 children. 2 go here. Jalen, who's a senior here, and Madison, who's a sophomore. Jalen plays lacrosse. Madison is a basketball cheerleader. And my older son serves our country in the Air Force. My wife's actually a teacher. Teaches at Bears Chapel, and she's been teaching for over 20 years. And I'm active in the community. I own a marketing company and a consulting business. So, and I really wanted to get into, I serve on the Planning Commission also.
Okay.
And so it was an open seat for aldermen, and I wanted to do more for my community. Planning Commission is fantastic, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done on the Planning Commission. but I really wanted to, do a little bit more, have an altruistic mentality. And so, serving the community and doing the best I can for the town of Arlington. And so I wanted to make this move.
Okay. So specifically, what qualifications do you have for the office of alderman?
Well, my degree, I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi. My degree was in political science. And again, like I said, I serve on the Planning Commission, and we do great work with the Planning Commission, and we review and approve zoning and site plan development for the town of Arlington right now. And also, I own a consulting business and a marketing company. And, we work with different businesses, different people, all types of businesses and different arenas. And so with doing that, one of our mottos with my marketing company is concept to execution. So we work with groups to really provide solutions for whatever their plans are. If they want to grow, if they want to, if it's a profitability a goal that they have, or if they want to expand. And so we work with different businesses to do that and provide different solutions. And so you may ask, well, how does it relate to an alderman? Well, as an alderman, we'll do the same thing. We would listen to the constituents, to the residents here, see what the needs are for Arlington, and work towards those goals and really provide solutions for the betterment of Arlington.
Okay, so specifically, what in your opinion is the most important issue or issues facing the mayor and board of aldermen for Arlington in the next 5 years, and do you have a plan to address those?
Well, I think the major issues would be growth, and there are really two types of growth, residential and commercial. And you have to really be smart and strategic when you are growing or for any town, to move forward. So our growth needs to be smart and strategic, and we need to make absolutely sure that we evaluate the needs of the residents, the needs of the town, looking at making sure that the neighborhoods are what we want it to be, and make sure that the right businesses come to the town that really maintain the aesthetics and the charm that Arlington has right now, while still meeting the needs of the residents. It's important to ensure that everybody's heard, everybody's listened to, and that we are focused on making sure the infrastructure is there, making sure that the school is prepared for whatever growth we have, and making sure that the roads are where we need them to be, and just really focus on what does the town need and how we can provide the right things for the town of Arlington for now and for the future.
Okay, so what should the relationship between a mayor and an alderman be?
The relationship between a mayor and an alderman is it's kind of like a board of directors. So you have the mayor who's over the board, and then you have the aldermen that have to work together, not for individual gain, but for the betterment of the town. And you have to have a great working relationship with staff, with administration, and then really listen to what everybody wants as far as the residents and what the town needs, and working together collectively for positive gain for Arlington is what the relationship should be.
Okay. So is there anything that Arlington doesn't have right now that you'd like to see happen?
I love playing golf. A golf course would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But seriously, that's really a tough question, because you really have to look at not just what I would want Arlington to have, but what the community wants Arlington to have, and what the residents want, and what would benefit the town of Arlington, not just short term, but long term as well. So looking at the right businesses that want to come in, looking at how the neighborhoods are developed, just making sure that we're working collectively to provide the right things for everyone here for long-term gain for Arlington.
Okay, well, thank you for coming by. Wish you good luck next month. We want to remind everyone that early voting starts August 30th, and that Election Day is September 19th. So get out and vote. Thank you very much. We'll go to our next candidate now. My name is Mickey Hudson, and today I'm joined by Russell Wiseman, candidate for the Arlington Alderman position 2. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Like I said, our format is fairly simple, and we'll start with the first question. Let's get started. It's not really a question, but briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
Russell Wiseman, born and raised in Arlington, moved away for college for a little bit. Running for office for obviously the same reasons most people do, and that's just want to see a change in direction as far as what the town's doing, development, spending, that kind of thing. Want to make a difference.
Okay. So specifically for the office of Alderman, what makes you qualified for that position?
Well, I was actually thinking about that today. 20 years ago this month, I was campaigning for an alderman seat in 1999 and won that seat and was the vice mayor for 4 years. And then ran for mayor in 2003, did that from 2003 to 2011, and resigned myself by not running again after serving 2 terms. And I've been watching and paying attention and want to change the directions Arlington's going. So that's what we're doing.
So what are the most important issues, in your opinion, facing Arlington in the next 5 years, and do you have a plan to address those?
Yeah, I mean, just like any up-and-coming municipality, challenges are development. How do you want to develop? Who do you want to be? Do you want to try to emulate other communities that have done it very successfully, or do you want to make your own way as far as how you want to grow? I'm pro-growth. I just think that we're a little laxed in what we're allowing, and want to try to tighten the reins and slow it down a little bit just so we can get focused and do it right, basically.
So growth, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your opinion, what kind of relationship, or in the public office, what kind of relationship should the mayor and alderman have?
I don't want to say joined at the hip, but you know, in being in an office before, I mean, you got to be a good communicator. You got to communicate things to the rest of the board. You're not always going to be on the same page. Listen to ideas. Kind of a symbiotic relationship in some respects, but in others you got to be able to listen to somebody if they don't agree with you. It's very important. The board needs to be a place where ideas flow. The mayor can't have all the ideas. I mean, and you have to be able to bring things forward and make sure everything gets a listen as far as ideas go.
So is there anything that doesn't exist now in Arlington that you would like to see happen?
Well, most people, when you ask them that question, the first thing they say is a Starbucks or some type of development or store or this or that. And then, you know, I always tread lightly whenever somebody says that, because you don't want to step on somebody's wishes. There's a little bit more to it than that. I mean, a lot of people that have moved out here, the first thing they say is, "Oh, it's so quiet, and it's so country, and it's so nice," but it'd be better for you to Starbucks. Well, but you're it's kind of a catch-22. You want to bring with you what you left behind. So you just want to develop the right way, make good decisions as far as what you allow. I mean, as far as what we have versus what we don't have. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I don't really have anything on my wish list as far as what I want Arlington to have, other than probably more of a vision when it comes to development, not kind of be led around by developers and whatnot, but to have our own vision.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck in the election next month. Want to
Thank you.
remind everyone that early voting starts August the 30th, and Election Day is September 19th. So stay tuned for our next interview. Our next guest is Josh Fox, candidate for Arlington Alderman Position 3. We want to thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
A few questions. We're all going to give the candidates the same questions, and we'll get started. So the first question is this. Briefly explain, not really a question, a statement, briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Fox. I have 21 years of law enforcement experience with the Shelby County Sheriff's Department. I moved here back in 2003. I have a senior at Arlington High School right now named Belle. She started in the school system in Arlington back in kindergarten, and I have a son who is 5 named Gavin. He is at Donaldson Elementary. So I have a vested, I have an investment here in the town,
Right.
where I want to make sure things, you want to make sure your investment
Okay.
continues on as you found it when you came in.
Okay. So specifically for this office, what qualifications would you have for alderman?
Well, like I said, with the 21 years of law enforcement experience, I would believe public safety would be my strongest that I can bring to the board. I'm a past board member for the town for the Public Safety Committee, and I was also the president of AYS Booster Club back when Belle was at AYS. So
Okay.
I have a lot of investment for the children and stuff like that.
Okay. So what are the most important issues that you feel are facing the mayor and board of aldermen in the next 5 years? And specifically, do you have a plan to address those?
Well, number one would be maintaining department services at above the same level as the town continues to grow in population. Number two would be preparing for and to meet the future challenges of public safety as the base population of the growth continues to go and the likelihood of criminal opportunities. I would address the first one by as our town grows and as development concurs, if it affects and as it does affect the community, I think it would be very important, which I have not seen the town do, is the aldermen and I believe then the mayor should reach out to the communities like we do with Neighborhood Watch. We have like Neighborhood Watch programs where we'll go to the neighborhood and say, what are you having problems with? What do you need help with? And actually sit down and say, look, these are the things that we're building. These are the things that want to come into the community. These are the permits that have been pulled. How would this affect you and your neighborhood and your quality of life? As far as the public safety goes, we have an asset that I hope we don't ever get rid of, and that's the sheriff's department, being our police department. The money that we save by having the sheriff's office and contract their services that we don't have to pay a town is just tremendous. And so I would like to contract or talk to the sheriff's department adding more patrols, more officers out here. This would be more visible.
Okay. So in your opinion, what should the relationship between an alderman and the mayor be?
It's basically the same thing as on the national level. You have I look at the alderman as your Congress, and I look at the mayor as the executive branch, the president.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have, definitely not the relationship we have now that we see in the United States, but a relationship where they can work together for a common ground and common goals. And the mayor, the way I look at the aldermen is we're the ones that are elected for the people that represent each different communities in each of the different neighborhoods or areas of Arlington. And we're kind of the eyes and ears for the mayor if he can't make it out, to get everybody to give the people's opinions of this is what everybody wants and make sure that all those opinions are on the table. So when you're making decisions, it's a decision across the board so that everybody's being heard. So it needs to be a very great relationship that we can work together.
Okay. So is there anything that does or doesn't exist now in Arlington that you would like to see happen if you're elected?
I wouldn't say if I don't know if it doesn't exist. I know it exists, but I want to make sure, and that is to enforce and support the town growth plan and to put into place methods to prevent social to special interest influence and exemptions and waivers in violation to those growth plans. What I mean is this: there was some controversy in the town about a hotel that was being built, and that there was some zoning done for the hotel, and that a storage unit had to be put in place for that hotel to be built. Well, some changes had to be done against ordinances or change of ordinances so that that could be done. There was other things where that hotel was specifically said by different ordinances that we have that the rooms have to be a certain size, where those rooms were changed and made smaller to make it easier for the developer. I want to be, if elected, strict on these policies that we have. If we say that it has to be XYZ, it needs to be XYZ. I don't want to come across that we're trying to do anybody any kind of favors. Not that I'm saying that's what happened, but I want to come back very, very transparent. The other issue that I have right now is we have 6 positions for aldermen. When you had aldermen back, and I can understand this, back when I moved here in 2003, everybody was an at-large position. So right now I believe our board, except for one, we have one gentleman that lives close to the middle school, but pretty much all the other aldermen live around the town square area. Well, I think it's time that we need to implement those positions to actually represent all of Arlington. We need to have a position for each part of Arlington so each area can be heard, all the citizens can be heard. That way when you do have developments and stuff like that, each of those people can go straight to that person and say, look, this is the issues I have, so they have that voice on the board. I think that's important. And then of course I'm for term limits.
Okay.
I think career politicians is something that we have an issue with in the national level, and you can't have an issue with it in a national level and not have an issue with it on a local level.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, we want to thank you, Mr. Fox, for joining us. Good luck in the election.
Thank you.
Want to remind everyone that early voting is August the 30th and Election Day is September 19th. So again, thank you, Mr. Fox. Good luck, and we will see you guys with our next candidate. Hello and welcome back. Our next guest is Mr. Jeff McKee, who is candidate for the Arlington Alderman position 3. I want to thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll get started here. Our first question, if you could briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
So I'm Jeff McKee. I'm the husband of Amanda McKee, and I've got 3 beautiful girls. They're in the school system, Olivia, Aubrey, and Kendall. And we've been residents of Arlington for over 18 years now, and just love this town. Love serving in it, love being a part of it. You know, and so everything we've done since we've been here as a family is circled around trying to make Arlington better. As much as our family starting a business here to starting the Merchants Association on Depot Square, which brought the music on the square, helped start the Fall Festival back years ago. So everything we've done as a family has been involved. And so I just love to serve the town and serve the people.
Okay.
And love to see how we can help drive the direction of our town.
Okay. So specifically, what qualifications do you have for the office of alderman?
Well, fortunately, I've had the opportunity several years ago when Russell Wiseman was mayor to be appointed on the beautification committee at the time, and then the design review committee, and then I had an opportunity and successfully ran for office 8 years ago. And so I've served 2 terms as an alderman in this seat. And so I think those things, along with being on additional committees such as the Planning Commission, gives me the qualifications to continue running for this position.
Okay. So in your opinion, what are the most important issues facing the mayor and board of aldermen in the next 5 years, and do you have a plan to address those?
So I think we're going to continue to see Arlington to be the most sought after place to live in Shelby County. It's a great community with great schools. It's a beautiful town with lots of upside. And so we're going to continue to see residential growth as well as the commercial following the rooftops out here. And so I think our biggest necessity is to continue to hold high standards and to welcome those new residents, to welcome the new businesses, but require them to build in a fashion that we require buildings to be out here, to be involved in our town. And I think one of our biggest things that we're going to have to address as a community is, as we grow, is still to be able to have that small town feel that everybody cherishes and loves so much. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've invested so much money and time specifically into Depot Square. So we think that that's the heart of the community. I don't think there's any argument about that with anybody. So we're going to continue to, at least for me, focusing on Depot Square events, things like that, to bring people together. Because the more we're together as a town and a community, I think that is what's so special about this town.
Okay. So what should the relationship be between an alderman and the mayor?
Well, I think you want to work together well. I don't think that the board is healthy when everybody thinks exactly the same, but we definitely don't want everybody so dogmatic that you can't get along. And so we're not there to work for each other. We're there to work together and try to get the best product we can on each thing that we vote for as a board. And so I think the relationship is one that is professional and that everyone comes prepared. Everybody's going to have their own ideas of what they think should be a final result. But as long as you can work together and share ideas and respect other people's opinions, I think that's what the board needs.
Okay. So is there anything that Arlington needs or doesn't have that you would like to see happen?
Well, I think, of course, everybody's going to say Chick-fil-A, right? and so, but I think the thing that we really need in our town, we as a town have invested heavily into Depot Square, specifically 4th Street Park, and we continue to see that grow and finish out as a product over the next 18 months. We hope to see that followed and continue seeing it with investors investing money down there and bringing products. And me personally, I think that Depot Square needs to see 2 to 3 restaurants come into Depot Square so that we can create a continuous, vibrant community in that area. And then also, that would encourage other retail into coming down there. I think for us to see long-term success with Depot Square, now that the town has put the investment in that area, to continue seeing private investment come in and follow that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Good luck next month in the election.
Thank you.
We want to remind everyone to get out and vote. Early voting starts on the 30th of August, and Election Day is September 19th. Get out and vote.
Hello and welcome. Our next candidate is Miss Lyle Conley, who is running for the Arlington Community Schools Board of Education Position 2. Welcome, Miss Conley, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started with our questions. Question 1, if you will briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
Well, as you've already stated, I'm Lyle Wilson Conley. I'm a candidate for the Arlington Community Schools School Board, position number 2. My husband and I have lived in Arlington our entire lives, and we raised our children here and they attended Arlington schools. I'm involved in civic activities, and I am a past president and member of the APTA, which is the Association for the Preservation of Tennessee Antiquities. I am on the Christmas on the Square committee. I'm an active member of my church, Advent Arlington, and I have helped with the Relay for Life walk. I have been director of Vacation Bible School, and I lead one of our women's ministries. I was also an EMT IV for the Arlington Fire Department many years ago. I want to run for this office because I want to continue to serve my community in the area of education. And as a school board member, I will be committed to making sure that our children receive quality education while they're in the Arlington Community Schools. I think that my past experiences in our community and in education will be beneficial.
Great. Okay, question 2. If you can tell me your qualifications for office in this position.
Right. I earned a dual Bachelor of Science degree in special education and elementary education at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and a Master's of Education from the University of Memphis. I am an educator. I began my career at Arlington Elementary School as a teacher and retired from Cape Bond Elementary School as principal with 32.5 years of wonderful service to children, teachers, and families. I've worked in Shelby County Schools and in Memphis City Schools District. Very different districts, but I think I've gleaned a lot of important information from those experiences that I'll be able to fall on, as a school board member. I have the heart of a teacher and love for children. I believe that public education is important, and I have the time and the energy to devote to board business.
Great. Question 3, in your opinion, what does the role of a member of the Board of Education play in our school system?
Well, our primary duty is to see that we provide the opportunity for the best education for all children. We are a policy-making legislative body, and the board speaks through policy. We write policy, and the superintendent carries out the policy.
Great. Okay, question 4. If you could choose one item that needs addressing currently in our school system, what would that item be?
First, I'd like to say that we have an awesome school system. Our teachers and administrators and staff are hard workers and committed professionally. We are a high achieving district, and we're among the top 5 rated ACT scores in the state. Our 2 elementary schools have received reward status 2 consecutive years, and I think that just speaks volumes for what's going on. But we do have concerns, and that is it's never a good thing to receive a level 1 evaluation in growth from the state. This has to be fixed. And I have every confidence that the administrators and teachers are working on this diligently, and it will be addressed effectively.
Great. Question 5, if elected, how would your participation on our Board of Education change Arlington Community Schools in the next 4 years?
Well, my experience in school planning is going to be useful to the district. We have a real challenge before us. Our neighbor city is going to build their own high school. They are projecting a start in 2021 or 2022. This has the potential for Arlington High School to lose 1/3 of its student body and the funding that goes with those children. This will cause a ripple effect in our district because we'll not only lose children and funding, but we'll lose teachers and possibly some school programs. My experience in fiscal operations I think will be useful to the board during this time, and this is just one way that I'll be able to make a difference in 4 years.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be
just a
here.
reminder, early voting begins on August 30th and Election Day is September 19th. Thank you, Ms. Conley.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome. Our next candidate is Ms. Jill Yelland, who is running for Arlington Community Schools Board of Education Position 2. Welcome, Ms. Yelland, and thank you for joining us. Let's get started. So question 1 is, briefly explain who you are and why you want to run for public office.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me here today. I appreciate this. In the absence of a public forum, I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to get a chance to all talk about things that make our campaigns perhaps different from our opponent. Most people probably realize I ran for school board 2 years ago, and I did so really just because there were some things that I thought during my oldest child's education experience that maybe could have been a little bit better. Some frustrations we came across, and gave it a shot 2 years ago, got kind of close, and I still feel very passionate about some of those changes and would like the opportunity to at least give it a shot again. So thought this time around with Ms. Fletcher not running for re-election that I would get my name back on the ballot and see what happens.
Great. Question 2, what are your qualifications for this office and position?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to start back at the very beginning just with my own upbringing, my background. Both of my parents were educators. My father was an early childhood education professor at UAB and was very active in the International Playground Association. So he was gone every year, every other year to international conferences that focused on the children's rights to play. One year he was president of the U.S. chapter of that. And when I was 8 in 3rd grade, we went to Norway to live for 1 year, a sabbatical. And of course, the school situation in Norway was very different from what I was used to growing up in Birmingham, that's where I'm from. And I know ever since that year, just being exposed to an entirely different approach to education, it definitely gave me a different perspective on how we do things here and always look outside the box. Just because we do something here, I know things are done differently in other places. And there was definitely an influence in just spending an entire year in somewhere that was so culturally very different, and the school setup was very different. And they did some really interesting things, and at 8 years of age, probably didn't see it at the time, but when I got home and came back to the traditional American public school system, it was different, and there are a lot of things that I reflected on fondly and still do from that 1 year. It made a huge impression on me even in third grade. So with my dad, his background, I mean, his emphasis on play and the child psychologist that he was, and then my mother being a kindergarten teacher for many years and then later a curriculum specialist for Jefferson County Schools in Birmingham, our dinner table conversations were almost entirely about education. And my brother and I, he's older and he actually went to film school, sat there, and we both feel very strongly about the schools that our kids go to. So having said that, then my own education, went to public schools all the way through. My high school experience was fantastic. It was a magnet school, but it was a public school. And a couple years after I graduated, it was listed by Newsweek magazine as the #1 school in America, which I think is quite an accomplishment for a little school in Birmingham. And they did some things kind of outside the box. Probably the best example that was wonderful was that every junior and senior had the opportunity to do a work study program. And so we had a counselor who set all that stuff up for us so we could, a lot of kids went to UAB and worked in the labs. My junior year, I worked at a music studio because I thought it would be kind of fun, and I knew I probably wouldn't do that as a career, but it was really fun to do. And then I did journalism, Birmingham Magazine, my senior year. And that was every single Wednesday. Didn't go to school, we went and did our little internship. So from there I went to Alabama, University of Alabama, and got my undergraduate in biology and humanities. It was through New College at University of Alabama. And then went to the University of Cincinnati and got my master's degree in medical genetics. So when we moved to Memphis, it was because that was my first job out of graduate school. And I worked at Le Bonheur and then UT Medical Group. And my role as a genetic counselor, I think, has certainly given me some skills that might work for the Board of Education. Communication, I was kind of the liaison between the patient and the doctors. When you're a genetic counselor, you're working with patients to make sure they understand what's going on with either themselves or their child. And everything we did was evidence-based. So of course, if you're talking about a woman who's got a hereditary risk for breast cancer, you're going to be looking at all the things that we know are going to work in terms of treatment, prevention, and that's all based on with the evidence-based approach. So that sort of stuff I think is important in the school setting as well, because when we see something happening in other school systems, and a good example is in Texas, where they have done introduced in a portion of schools 3 to 4 15-minute recess times for kindergarten through second grade, and then seen an amazing improvement in the kids' social interactions, less bullying, kids get along so much better, and then their test scores got a lot higher as well. And it goes back to doing things that are development appropriate for kids of certain ages. So the evidence-based approach, communication, and being a liaison, those are kind of the main things I think that my job as a genetic counselor gave me some skills that might hopefully would help with being on the Board of Education.
Great. Okay. Let's go to question 3. In your opinion, what does the role of a member of the Board of Education play in our school system?
Okay. Members of the Board of Education kind of have 2 roles. They're an advocate for teachers and for parents and for kids. Not just locally, but at the state level as well, because we have the State Board of Education. And I think it would be very important to make sure that, as a board member, listen to what parents' concerns are. As a parent, that was a frustration that I always had, that although you could go to a board meeting, you have your 2 minutes to talk, it is not a question and answer session. You just state your case. You may or may not get a response afterwards, but you certainly don't get one then. I've always thought that at least we look into the Board of Education having once or twice a year, if not quarterly, some kind of Q&A forum for parents to come to. Because, there's always questions that people have or concerns, and I think just to have some sort of place where they know they can go and voice their concerns would be good. So advocacy, and then of course policy setting, that's the other main thing. The school board sets the policy, and then the school administration implements the policy.
Okay. Question 4, if you could choose one item that needs addressing currently in our schools, in our school system, what would that be?
Good question. Okay, so hard to narrow it down to just one. I'm going to separate it by age ranges. probably the first thing that even got me even thinking about running for school board 2 years ago was when my oldest was in middle school and she didn't have the opportunity to do a lab dissection. For a lot of people, maybe that's not a big deal, but I think when you're talking about the sciences and capturing kids' interest in science at that age, before they have to choose their focus area going on to high school, that is a seemingly simple task, but something that's so much different from just typical textbook worksheet learning, that kids should have the opportunity to do that. And a lot of districts do. It's a pretty standard thing, and for some reason we didn't have that in our middle school. So that kind of piqued my interest, but I thought, not the end of the world, we can deal with that. I guess when we get to the high school level, she'll have that opportunity. And then that didn't happen in high school. She was in honors biology, and again, it was no dissections offered. So that's something that I think high quality labs at the upper class level is very important to get those introduced, and chemistry as well. I mentioned earlier about the recess time for unstructured playtime for elementary school kids or younger elementary school kids. That's something I would like to at least explore, put on the discussion table. More broadly, I'd like to just pull back on the whole approach of one size fits all for an education approach for the kids, because one size fits all stuff doesn't really fit anybody very well. It can be awkward and uncomfortable if it doesn't fit you well. And certainly you've got kids who don't need an entire week to cover a math skill, for example. They may get it on day one. If they understand it on day one, then why wait 2 or 3 days or an entire week to have to move on to the next skill? Conversely, you have kids that might not understand it after week 1. And when you're talking about elementary school-based math, that foundation is critical. You have to have a good, solid understanding of math in those early years, because everything builds on that. And if your foundation isn't strong, all those higher level maths are just going to come crumbling down, and you're going to be struggling the entire time. So with all of this adaptive software that's out there now, and us using the iPads, I believe there's probably a way we can look at customizing some of these things a little better and making it more individualized for kids who might need more help in certain areas, or who already get it and are ready to move on to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Question 5, if elected, how would your participation on our Board of Education change Arlington Community Schools in the next 4 years?
Well, board members, there are 5, so for one to make a huge change, it would be great if one was able to. I would certainly hope after 4 years, if I were to be lucky enough to be elected, that parents would feel like their voices were being heard, that students were more excited to go into class every day, they were more engaged in the learning process, that teachers had more support, even just more money for supplies, and that we had a bigger presence at the state level. I think that's something I would be pushing for as well.
Great. Well, if that's everything, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Early voting starts August 30th, and official voting starts September 19th.
September 19th is Election Day.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.